My son Daniel's voice stabbed through the phone like a jagged blade. "Mom, we all agreed you're not welcome at Tommy's wedding." I stood in my kitchen, the Afghan I poured my soul into for my grandson, its patches of his childhood scorched by their betrayal, clutched in my trembling hands, as my heart shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. My name is Margaret Sullivan Maggie, to anyone who's ever sat at my kitchen table in Harborview, Maine. For 30 years, I taught third graders how to read, how to dream, in a classroom smelling of chalk and salt air from the nearby coast. I raised my son Daniel alone after my husband Tom passed, his heart giving out one foggy morning on his lobster boat. I sold my mother's pearl necklace to pay for Daniel's college books at Bowdoin, stayed up nights grading papers to keep food on our table. That old clapboard house on Spruce Street, with its creaky porch and chipped sugar jar, was where I built a life for us. For Daniel. For my grandson. Tommy. Tommy was my light. I taught him to sound out words, his small fingers tracing letters on my oak table. I cheered myself hoarse at his little league games, rain or shine, my thermos of coffee steaming in the Maine chill. But Daniel changed. He married Claire Donovan, a woman whose smile was as polished as her Lexus, who wanted a life too bright for our small-town roots. "Mom, we're moving up," Daniel said once, his voice sharp, like I was an anchor dragging him down. Claire's words stung worse. "Maggie, your quilts are sweet, but they don't match our aesthetic." I poured my heart into Tommy's Afghan, stitching patches of his old baseball jersey, each thread a memory of nights reading him bedtime stories by the harbor's glow. But now their rejection burns deeper than the coldest winter tide. How did my love become their shame? The sting of Daniel's words lingered like salt in a wound, raw and unrelenting. In my Harborview kitchen, where the scent of pine and sea air drifted through the screen door, I stood frozen, the Afghan still in my arms, its weight heavier than the 50 yards of yarn I'd spun into it. I'd spent months knitting it for Tommy's wedding, each stitch a prayer for his happiness, each patch a piece of our shared past, his old baseball jersey, a scrap from the flannel shirt he wore when we built kites on Pemaquid Beach. But now, my love was an embarrassment, a relic they'd rather bury than display. How had it come to this? I thought back to the slow unraveling of our family, like a sweater snagged on a nail, pulling apart thread by thread. Daniel wasn't always this cold. As a boy, he'd run to me after school, his sneakers muddy from the marsh trails, spilling stories about his day. But when he married Claire Donovan, everything shifted. Claire, with her manicured nails and her Pinterest-perfect vision of life, saw my small-town ways as a stain on her polished image. "Maggie, your meatloaf is charming, but we're doing farm-to-table now," she'd said at a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago, her smile as thin as the ice on Penobscot Bay. I'd laughed it off, but the jab stuck, festering. Daniel followed her lead. He stopped calling on Mother's Day, claiming he was swamped with real estate deals. Last year, he forgot my 70th birthday entirely, though he found time to post a photo of Claire's new SUV on Instagram, captioned, "Living the dream." I'd sent him a text, "Hope you're doing okay, sweetheart," but got nothing back. Just silence, sharp as a blade. Tommy, my sweet Tommy, was different for a while. He'd still stop by, his lopsided grin lighting up my porch like the lighthouse on Monhegan Island. But even he started pulling away, caught in Claire's orbit. "Gran, I'm just busy with college," he'd say, his eyes dodging mine. I wanted to believe him, but the truth was colder. Claire and Daniel had rewritten me as the outdated grandmother, too folksy for their sleek wedding plans. I walked to the hallway, where the wedding invitation sat on my oak table, its cream cardstock gleaming like a taunt. I'd found it in the mail 2 weeks ago, expecting to see my name among the guests. But it wasn't there. Not even a courtesy mention. Claire's name was embossed in gold above Tommy's, as if she were the queen of this union. I traced the edges, my fingers trembling, and remembered the dress I'd bought for the occasion, a soft blue number, knee-length, with sleeves to cover the bruises from my blood thinners. It hung on the back of my bedroom door, next to a pair of navy kitten heels I'd picked out at the thrift store in Damariscotta. I'd wanted to feel beautiful, not young or glamorous, just seen, but they'd made it clear. I was invisible. The final blow came at Mabel's diner, a stone's throw from Harborview's main street, where the smell of fried clams and coffee hung thick in the air. I was picking up a slice of blueberry pie when I overheard Claire's voice from a booth behind me. She was with her friend Trina, the one with the laugh like a foghorn. "Maggie's too much, you know," Claire said, her tone dripping with disdain. All her quilts and church suppers, she'd clash with the wedding's vibe. "We're going for coastal chic, not grandmother's attic." Trina chuckled, and Claire went on. "Daniel agreed it's better this way. She'd just make a fuss." My heart stopped, the pie box shaking in my hands. I slipped out before they saw me, the bell above the door jangling like a warning. Back home, I sank into my rocking chair, the one Tom built before Daniel was born. Its wood worn smooth by years of worry. The Afghan lay across my lap, its patches mocking me with memories Tommy's first home run, the summer we flew kites until the stars came out. I'd been there for every milestone, every fever, every tear. I drove 20 miles to Augusta to buy Tommy's inhalers when Daniel was too busy. I baked blueberry muffins for his school bake sales, even when my arthritis screamed. And now, they'd erased me, like I was nothing more than a smudge on their perfect life. I called my friend Ellen Harper, the retired nurse who'd seen me through Tom's death and every heartbreak since. "They've cut me out, Ellen," I said, my voice breaking like waves on the rocks. "Claire thinks I'm a joke." Ellen's voice was steady, sharp as a tack. "Maggie, you're no joke. You're the backbone they're too blind to see. Don't let them dim your light." Her words sparked something, but the pain was still a tidal wave, drowning me. I looked at the invitation again, its edges curling under my grip. What had I done to deserve this? Was my love too heavy, too rough for their polished world? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the harbor in shades of fire and ash, I felt the weight of their rejection settle into my bones. I wasn't just uninvited, I was unwanted. The clock on my mantel ticked on, each second a reminder of the life I'd poured into them, now discarded like driftwood on the shore. But something stirred beneath the hurt, a flicker of defiance. I wasn't ready to let go, not yet. There had to be a way to make them see me, to make them feel the sting of their own choices. The weight of Claire's words at Mabel's diner clung to me like damp fog rolling off Penobscot Bay, chilling my bones. I stumbled back to my clapboard house on Spruce Street, the pie box forgotten on the counter, its blueberry filling as sour as the truth I'd overheard. My kitchen, once alive with Tommy's laughter and the clatter of my old mixing bowls, felt like a tomb. The Afghan I'd knitted for his wedding lay crumpled on the rocking chair, its patches his baseball jersey, the kite fabric from our summers mocking me with memories they'd discarded. I'd given them everything, every scrap of my heart, and they'd tossed it aside like seaweed on the shore. I sank to the floor, my back against the cold linoleum, and let the pain swallow me whole. My hands, gnarled from years of grating papers and kneading dough, clutched the Afghan as if it could anchor me, but it couldn't. The invitation, with its gold-embossed lie, sat on the table, a silent accusation. Claire's voice echoed in my head. "Maggie's too much." She'd clash with the vibe. Daniel's silence was worse, he'd agreed. My own son, the boy I'd carried through fevers and heartbreak, and Tommy, my light, had let them erase me. I was nothing to them, a shadow they'd swept under their polished rug. I don't know what pushed me to my feet, maybe it was the ache, too heavy to carry anymore. I grabbed the Afghan and staggered out to the backyard, where the fire pit sat under the old maple tree, its leaves whispering in the Maine dusk. The air smelled of salt and pine, but it offered no comfort. I tossed the Afghan into the pit, its colors vivid against the rusted iron. My hands shook as I struck a match, the flame flickering like my fading hope. "This is what you wanted," I whispered, my voice raw, as if speaking to Daniel, to Claire, to Tommy. The fire caught, licking at the fabric, consuming the patches I'd sewn with love. The baseball jersey curled into ash, the kite fabric blackened. Smoke rose, thick and bitter, curling into the sky like every dream I'd pinned on them. I stood there, watching my heart burn, tears streaming down my face for the first time since Daniel's call. The firelight danced on my weathered skin, illuminating the lines etched by years of sacrifice, 30 years of teaching, 20 miles driven for Tommy's inhalers, countless nights baking for their bake sales. I'd sold my mother's pearls for Daniel's college, mended his clothes when he couldn't afford new ones, sat through his sullen teenage years without complaint. And for what? To be told I didn't belong at my grandson's wedding? To hear Claire laugh about my folksy ways? The pain wasn't just a wound now, it was a chasm, swallowing me whole. My neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, peered over the fence, her eyes wide in the fire's glow. "Maggie, you okay?" she called, her voice soft but urgent. I didn't answer. How could I? How do you explain that your family carved you out like a blemish on their perfect picture? I just stared into the flames. The Afghan now a heap of ash, its warmth gone forever. "Go back inside, Ruth," I said finally, my voice hollow, barely audible over the crackle. She hesitated, then retreated, leaving me alone with the wreckage. I sank onto the grass, the dew soaking through my skirt, and pressed my hands to my chest, as if I could hold the pieces of myself together. The stars above Harborview blinked, indifferent, as if the universe itself had turned its back. I thought of the dress, that soft blue number hanging in my bedroom, bought to make me feel seen. It would stay there, unworn, like me, unwanted, unneeded. "I gave you everything," I whispered to the night, my voice breaking. "And you left me with nothing." The pain was a tidal wave, crashing over me, leaving no room for anger, only despair. But as the fire died to embers, something shifted. A spark, faint but stubborn, flickered in my chest. I'd given them my love, my time, my everything, but I hadn't given them my worth. That was mine, buried deep under their rejection, waiting to be reclaimed. I stood, my knees aching, and brushed the ash from my hands. The night was still, save for the distant hum of waves against the harbor. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I couldn't stay broken. There had to be a way to rise from this, to make them see the woman they'd tried to erase. The embers of the fire pit glowed faintly in my Harborview backyard, the ashes of Tommy's Afghan scattered like broken promises across the iron. The pain of that night clung to me, heavy as the fog that blanketed Penobscot Bay at dawn. I'd burned my love, let it turn to ash, but as I stood in the chill of the Maine morning, something stirred a spark, not of fire, but of defiance. I wasn't done. Not yet. My kitchen, with its chipped sugar jar and faded linoleum, felt less like a tomb now, more like a battlefield where I'd fight to reclaim myself. I shuffled to the hallway, my arthritis protesting with every step, and opened the cedar chest that had sat untouched since Tom's death 15 years ago. Its hinges creaked, releasing a faint scent of cedar and old paper, like memories trapped in time. Inside were keepsakes from a life I'd built for Daniel and Tommy, report cards, a lock of Tommy's baby hair, letters from Daniel's college days, scrawled with thanks for my care packages. At the bottom, beneath a faded photo of Tommy flying a kite on Pemaquid Beach, I found it, a leather-bound folder, its edges worn but intact. Tom's trust papers. I sat at the kitchen table, the morning light slanting through the window, catching dust motes in its glow. The folder felt heavy, not just from the weight of the paper but from the power it held. Tom had set up a trust for Tommy's future, a modest sum, enough for a house down payment or a fresh start after his wedding. But here was the truth they'd forgotten. I was the sole trustee. Tom's voice echoed in my mind from that day at the lawyer's office in Damariscotta, his hand firm on mine. "Maggie, you'll know when Tommy's ready. You're the steady one." They didn't know. Not Daniel, with his real estate deals and polished shoes. Not Claire, with her coastal chic wedding plans. Not even Tommy, caught in their shadow. I opened the folder, my fingers tracing the notarized lines. There it was, in black ink. Funds to be dispersed at the discretion of the trustee, Margaret Sullivan, upon the establishment of a stable and supportive marital union, witnessed by her presence. Asterisk. My heart pounded, a drumbeat against the silence of their betrayal. They thought they could erase me, but I held the key to Tommy's future, a future they'd planned without me. The realization wasn't joy. It was a blade, sharp and cold, cutting through the fog of my despair. I called Ellen Harper, my friend since we were girls sneaking blueberry muffins from church potlucks. She answered on the first ring, her voice as sharp as the scissors she used to cut bandages in her nursing days. "Maggie, you sound different. What's happened?" I gripped the phone, my voice low but steady. "I found Tom's trust papers, Ellen. I'm the trustee. They can't touch a dime unless I say so." Silence, then a low chuckle. "Oh, Maggie, you've got them now. What's your move?" I paused, staring at the folder. "I don't know yet, but I'm done being their doormat." Ellen insisted I come to her office, a small law firm 2 blocks away, where the air smelled of eucalyptus and old books. She sat across from me, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes gleaming with the kind of fire you get when you've seen too much to stay quiet. "This trust is your leverage, Maggie," she said, tapping the papers. "They think you're just the woman who bakes pies and knits quilts. Show them you're more." I nodded, my hands steady for the first time in days. "They wanted me gone, Ellen. But I'm not going anywhere." She leaned back, her pen tapping the desk. "You could hold the funds until they invite you, really invite you, not some pity RSVP. Or you could rewrite the terms entirely. It's your call." I looked out her window, where the harbor sparkled under the May sun, fishing boats bobbing like they had no care in the world. My mind churned, not with anger now, but with clarity. I'd spent decades giving my time, my love, my mother's pearls, for a family that saw me as a burden. But this trust, this piece of paper, was my voice, louder than their dismissal. I stood, the folder tucked under my arm, and felt a shift, like the tide turning after a storm. "I need to think, Ellen," I said, my voice firm. "But when I act, they'll feel it." She smiled, a glint of pride in her eyes. "That's my Maggie." As I stepped onto the street, the salt air filled my lungs, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel broken. I felt dangerous. They'd pushed me to the edge, but I'd found a foothold. Now, I'd make them face the woman they'd tried to forget. The trust papers lay open on my kitchen table, their ink as bold as the fire now burning in my chest. The Harborview morning was quiet, save for the distant cry of gulls over Penobscot Bay. But inside me, a storm was brewing. I'd been their anchor, their lighthouse, their Maggie always giving, always waiting. But no more. Daniel, Claire, even Tommy, they'd carved me out of their lives, thinking I'd fade like the fog at dawn. They were wrong. Those papers, Tom's final gift, gave me a voice louder than their dismissal. I wasn't just a grandmother with a knitting needle. I was the gatekeeper to their future. I walked the 2 blocks to Ellen Harper's law office, the trust folder tucked under my arm like a shield. The May sun warmed my face, but my resolve was colder, sharper, like the edge of a clamshell. Ellen greeted me at the door, her eyes glinting with the same defiance I felt. "Ready to shake their world, Maggie?" she asked, her voice low, like we were plotting a revolution. I nodded, my lips tight. "They wanted me gone, Ellen. Let's see how they like it when I'm the one holding the cards." We sat at her oak desk, the air thick with the scent of eucalyptus and justice. Ellen spread the trust papers out, her pen poised like a surgeon's scalpel. "Here's the clause," she said, pointing to the line about my discretion as trustee. "You can lock the funds until they meet your terms. What do you want?" I leaned back, my hands folded over the locket at my throat, the one with Tommy's childhood photo nestled beside Tom's. "I want to be seen," I said, my voice steady as the tide. No funds unless I'm formally invited to Tommy's wedding and present, not just a name on a list. Ellen's pen scratched across the legal pad, drafting the new clause. No disbursement without your verified presence at the marital ceremony. She read aloud, her voice crisp. That'll hit them where it hurts. I didn't smile. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Make it ironclad, I said. They don't get a penny unless I'm there, standing tall. She nodded, her bun glinting in the sunlight streaming through the window. Consider it done, Maggie. I'll file it with the county clerk by noon. I left her office, the folder lighter in my hands but heavy with purpose. Back home, I stood in my kitchen, the same one where I'd baked blueberry muffins for Tommy's bake sales, where I'd mended Daniel's clothes when he was too broke to buy new ones. The phone rang, shattering the silence. Daniel's name flashed on the caller ID. I let it ring twice, my heart pounding like waves against the rocks, before I answered. Mom, he said, his voice tight, cautious, like a man stepping onto thin ice. I heard you were at Ellen's. Something about the trust? I let the silence stretch, sharp and deliberate. That's right, I said finally, my tone as cold as the Maine winter. I changed the terms. No money for Tommy unless I'm at his wedding. He sputtered, his realtor polish cracking. You can't do that, Mom. That's his future. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. You chose Claire's image over my love, Daniel. You don't get to decide what I can do. He tried again, softer now, like he could charm me back. Let's talk this out. We didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't mean to? I snapped, my voice rising like a storm surge. You told me I wasn't welcome at my grandson's wedding. You let Claire call me a clash with your aesthetic. I've been your doormat for years, Daniel, but I'm done being invisible. He went quiet, his breath hitching. Mom, please. I cut him off. The papers are signed. Tell Claire her coastal chic won't pay for Tommy's house. I hung up, my hand trembling but my heart steady. The kitchen clock ticked on, each second a step away from the woman who'd begged for their scraps. I sat in Tom's old rocking chair, the trust folder on my lap, and looked out at the harbor, where fishing boats bobbed under a sky as clear as my resolve. Daniel's call was just the beginning. They'd feel the weight of their choices now, every ounce of it. But this wasn't enough, not yet. I needed them to face me, not just over a phone line, but in the open, where their polished lies couldn't hide. The lobster festival was coming. The whole town gathered under string lights and the scent of buttery rolls. That's where I'd make my stand. The Harborview Lobster Festival was in full swing, its string lights twinkling like stars over Penobscot Bay. The air thick with the scent of buttery lobster rolls and the hum of a local folk band. I stood on the edge of the crowd, my navy skirt crisp, my white blouse with its lace collar pressed to perfection, the locket at my throat, holding Tommy's childhood photo beside Tom's, felt like a talisman, grounding me as I prepared to face the family that had cast me aside. Daniel's call, his voice cracking with panic over the trust, still echoed in my ears. They thought they could charm me back with half-hearted apologies. But I wasn't here to bend. Tonight, I'd make them see the woman they'd tried to erase. The festival was Harborview's heart, where neighbors swapped stories over steaming clams and kids chased fireflies across the grassy square. I spotted Claire first, her beige silk dress catching the light as she laughed with her friend Trina, her voice carrying over the crowd like a foghorn. Maggie chose not to come to the wedding, she said, loud enough for nearby townsfolk to hear, her smile as polished as her lies. She's happier at home with her quilts. My blood boiled, a storm surging in my veins. She was rewriting my pain, painting me as the one who walked away. I stepped forward, my kitten heels clicking on the cobblestone path, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. That's not true, Claire, I said, my voice cutting through the music like a blade through sailcloth. Faces turned, conversations hushed, the band faltering for a beat. Claire's smile froze, her eyes darting to Daniel, who stood nearby, his tie too tight, his face pale as the moon. Tommy was there too, his shoulders hunched, his gaze fixed on the ground. "You didn't invite me?" I continued, my voice steady but laced with fire. "You told Daniel to call me, to say I wasn't welcome at my grandson's wedding because my love didn't fit your Instagram feed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Caldwell, my neighbor, clutched her lobster roll, her eyes wide. Claire's laugh was brittle, a crack in her perfect facade. "Maggie, you're misunderstanding, let's talk privately," she said, her voice syrupy, but I wasn't buying it. "No, Claire," I snapped, my hands clenched at my sides. "You wanted this public when you laughed about my folksy ways at Mabel's diner. You wanted me gone, but I'm here, and I'm not your prop." Daniel stepped forward, his hands raised like he could calm the storm. "Mom, this isn't the place," he said, his voice low, pleading. But I was done with his half measures. "This is exactly the place, Daniel," I said, my eyes locked on his. "You let Claire decide I was too much, too old, too Harborview for your shiny new life. But I'm the woman who sold her pearls for your college, who drove 20 miles for Tommy's inhalers, who loved you when you had nothing." Tommy lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine, wet with shame. I pulled a photo from my purse, the one of us at his first baseball game, him grinning in his too big jersey, me cheering in the stands. I held it out, my hand trembling but my voice firm. "This is who we were, Tommy," I said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Before they convinced you I was a burden." He took the photo, his fingers brushing mine, and for a moment, I saw the boy who called me his lighthouse. Claire's face flushed, her charm crumbling. "You're making a scene, Maggie," she hissed, but the townsfolk were watching, their murmurs growing. "You made the scene, Claire," I shot back, "when you decided my love was clutter." I turned to the crowd, my voice rising like the tide. "This town raised me, loved me, and I won't let my family paint me as the one who left." The band started up again, but the air was charged, the festival no longer just a celebration. I walked away, my heart pounding, the locket warm against my skin. I'd laid my truth bare, and it felt like breaking free from chains. But Tommy's face lingered in my mind, his eyes searching for something lost. Maybe there was still a way to reach him, to rebuild what we'd had. But it would take more than words, it would take truth, raw and unyielding. The echoes of my words at the Harborview Lobster Festival lingered in the air like the fading notes of the folk band, sharp and unforgettable. I'd stood tall under those string lights, my truth laid bare before the town, Claire's lies unraveling like a frayed rope. But Tommy's eyes wet with shame, clutching the photo of us at his first baseball game, stayed with me as I walked home, the salt air of Penobscot Bay cooling my burning resolve. I'd made them see me, but the cost was heavy, a fracture in the family I'd spent decades building. Yet, in that fracture, a sliver of hope glimmered. Maybe Tommy, my light, could still find his way back. 2 days later, a soft knock came at my door, hesitant, like the tap of a gull's beak on driftwood. I opened it to find Tommy, his lopsided grin gone, replaced by a look I hadn't seen since he was a boy with a fever, scared and searching. "Gran," he said, his voice breaking on the word. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, my heart caught between pain and possibility. "Always, sweetheart," I said, my voice softer than I meant, betraying the love that still lived beneath my hurt. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd taught him to read, where I'd bandaged his scraped knees. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the chipped sugar jar and casting a warm glow on the oak. I poured him a mug of chamomile tea, the steam curling like a question between us. He held the baseball photo, his thumb tracing the edge where I stood cheering in the stands, my face bright with pride. "I didn't see you, Gran," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I let Mom and Dad convince me you were too much." The words stung, but they were honest, raw like the Maine wind after a storm. I leaned back, my hands folded over the locket at my throat, Tommy's childhood face pressed against Tom's inside it. "You were my world, Tommy," I said, my voice steady but heavy with years of unspoken love. When your parents were chasing their dreams, I was building your childhood 20 miles to Augusta for your inhalers, muffins for your bake sales, kites on Pemaquid Beach. I didn't ask for thanks, but I didn't expect to be erased. His eyes filled, tears spilling over as he looked at the photo. I believed them, he said, his voice cracking. They said you didn't want to come, that you were tired of us. I should have asked you myself. I reached across the table, my hand brushing his, the same way I did when he was small and scared. You were a boy, Tommy, caught in their tide. But you're here now, he nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I found this, he said, pulling a crumpled card from his pocket, a Mother's Day note he'd made at 8, scrawled in crayon. Gran, you're my superhero. Love, Tommy. Asterisk. My throat tightened, the memory flooding back. Him handing it to me after a Little League game, his grin brighter than the May sun. I meant it then, he said, his voice trembling. I still do. I'm so sorry, Gran. I took the card, its edges worn like my heart, and set it beside the mug. Love starts with truth, Tommy, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. I won't be at your wedding not because I don't love you, but because I love myself too much to beg for a seat at your table. His face crumpled, but he nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. Can I come back? He asked, his voice small. If you keep the door open with truth, I said. It'll always be open. We ate lunch in quiet, just grilled cheese with extra cheddar, the way he liked it as a kid, crusts cut off, with a side of tomato slices sprinkled with sea salt. He helped clear the plates, his movements careful, like he was afraid to break something fragile. As he left, he hugged me, long and tight, like the boy who'd clung to me during thunderstorms. I'll make this right, Gran, he whispered. I didn't answer, but I held him a moment longer, the locket warm against my chest. As the door closed, I sat in the silence, the kitchen clock ticking softly. Tommy's apology was a start, but it wasn't enough, not yet. I'd laid my truth bare, but the weight of their betrayal still lingered. I needed to decide what came next, not just for Tommy but for me. The trust, the wedding, the life I'd built, they were all pieces of a puzzle I was still solving, one that demanded I choose myself first. The Harborview sunset painted the sky in hues of pink and indigo, its light spilling over Penobscot Bay like a quiet promise. I sat on my porch, the locket at my throat. Tommy's childhood smile pressed against Tom's warm against my skin. I hadn't gone to the wedding. The soft blue dress stayed unworn, the navy kitten heels untouched, but I wasn't grieving. I'd chosen myself, not with anger, but with a clarity as steady as the main tides. I wrote a letter to the local community college, funding a scholarship for single mothers in Tom's name, a tribute to the love we'd built and the women like me who'd loved families that outgrew them. My worth wasn't in what Daniel and Claire took, or even in what Tommy offered back in his tearful apology. It was in what I gave myself: peace, unapologetic and hard-won. I sipped cinnamon tea, the porch swing creaking under me, and thought of the years I'd spent waiting to be seen. No more. Your worth isn't measured by the invitations you receive, but by the courage you find to stand alone. If my story resonates, share it. Like this video, leave a comment with your own journey of finding strength, and subscribe to the Unwanted Revenge for more stories of truth rising from pain. Let's honor the light we carry, together.